Hi, I'm Elena. My talk today will be Charts and Visualize. I'm very proud of this title. It took me a while to get it. So a few words about myself. I've been doing data for about 8 years now. I did BI analysis and BI engineering and some data science. And today I'm a product manager at Panoply. And basically what we do is we provide the option of creating a data warehouse without writing a single line of code. So basically we're taking the DBAs and the BI engineers out of the equations and giving the power to create your entire data structures to analysts and data scientists. So that's a few words about Panoply. Okay guys, with a show of hands, who in this room looks at dashboards every day? Awesome. At least once a week? Great. Is anybody here doesn't look at dashboards at least once a week? Okay, we're going to have a talk later because this is not acceptable, okay? Okay, so all of you look at dashboards, which is amazing. But my question for you is why? Why do you look at dashboards? I need some help, it's a question.
To get derived information from data.
Okay, this is a great answer. Any other reasons?
My boss tells me to.
Your boss tells you to. Anybody has some vanity dashboards on like a TV in a room and you want them to look pretty? Yeah. The idea of data visualization is basically taking logs and turning them into actual data we can use. So the goal is to take data and turn it into insights. And in our world specifically, it's more about turning it from insights to actionable actions. If I look at a chart, I want to understand immediately what it means and what is my next action. And unfortunately, like we're going to see soon, a lot of the charts don't provide that. So I have two quotes for you. That one is very popular. The other one is slightly less popular, but I really like both of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how they come to life at charts. So scale matters. This is one of the basics, but we're going to see that still sometimes it's not applied. So I don't know if you saw this. This is a this is an article from TechRadar. They showed the difference between the GPU of AMD and Intel. Does anybody feel that Intel is like way further? The problem is that if you look at the scale, you will see that AMD is at 68 and Intel is at 69. So actually, it's just like a difference of 1, which I'm going to assume is not that significant, or at least it's not as significant as we're looking at right here. So here's an example of a CPU chart, trend. And what we can see here that it's very messy. It's really hard to understand what do I need to understand from here. And this is how a lot of the charts I see in operational dashboards look like. Okay, you know this. So a better way of showing this information is like this. We need to start the scale at 0. Now, not every chart must start at 0. If your baseline starts at, I don't know, 15, you can start at 15, but it needs to start at the baseline of the information. A better way to show this chart is actually like this, because I know what's my scale. I know that it can move from 0 to 100. It cannot pass 100, but also it doesn't need to stop at 40. So I want to show the information not just in a pretty way, I want to show it in the right way, in a way that I can look at it in a glance and understand what is my action. Even better way to show this chart is actually like this. So if I know what's my threshold, and if I know at what point I need to be concerned, then why don't put this up? So everybody can look at it and understand, oh, I had a slight increase in the end, but I'm still like way below my threshold, so I'm good. Okay, so why do we have trust issues with charts? Because the news lie to us all the time with information. This is a chart about Obamacare, and basically what it says is that in the next 4 days, until now, 6 million people enrolled to this program, and we have 4 days to get to the goal of 7 million. Who here, from looking at this chart, think that it's completely plausible and we're going to make it? Okay, very few I would assume. But what if I'll show you this like this? Now, do you feel any differently? Suddenly the goal seems much more achievable and like they're going to make it probably. So this is one way of how scale matters and how we perceive different things. Even though they showed us the right information, they wrote the number, and still we got to very different conclusions from these two. This chart represents the deaths in Florida caused by guns. After they passed in 2005 a law basically that allows you to shoot somebody if they enter your property. Looking at this, you've been looking at it for a few minutes now, for a few seconds now at least. After this law, did more people start dying or less? Who thinks it's more? Who thinks it's less? Okay. This is a great example. So actually what happened here is over creativity because we all perceive charts in a certain way. And this needs to look like this. Now, does anybody think that the number of deaths went down? No, nobody thinks that because this is how we usually look at information. Now, this is not an honest mistake, okay? It's meant to deceive us. They are providing us with the information, but they are lying to us completely. Now, it's not only global, it's also local. This is a chart from 2012 from Maariv, one of the newspapers. And looking at this, I learned two things. One is that not much have changed since 2012. This is one thing. And the second thing is that 27 looks really close to 18 and 15. Like, looking at this chart, all the other guys have a really good chance, like not bad. But what happened here is that these charts needed to look like this. Now looking at this chart, they don't really stand a chance, and because this is from 2012, we actually know what happened. And again, this is just plain deceiving. Nobody made this by accident. This is, again, not an honest mistake. The best we can claim is that they wanted to save some space and they shrunk it a bit. Let's say that this is an annual revenue of a company, but everybody likes charts that go up because we all like pretty charts. So what can I do to make this look nicer? How about I'll show it cumulatively? Yay! Now the revenue goes up and everybody are happy. Okay, so I'm done with showing you charts that completely lie to our faces. But let's go over some mistakes, and some of them are more common than others that can happen to us really by an honest mistake. So let's say that I took the information on all of my critical alerts that happened in every month. I pulled them to an Excel and I created this chart. Let's try and understand what is described here. So basically what it says that, any help from the audience? Do you feel that every month there's less and less? We're getting better. So July is much better than June, right? But what happens with tools like Excel or any other plot tool basically is that sometimes they try to make our lives easier and they continue the line. So if I'm going to add data points, it's actually going to look like this. So what happened here is that I had a lot of alerts in January. I had more alerts in February. I did a really good fix in March, and then I had 3 months with 0 alerts. So actually, I'm not getting better and better. I have a problem again that I thought I fixed. So this is a better way of showing this information, and I hope you agree, because this way it's really clear. Bar charts are not going to add bars just to make it look nicer or smoother, so it's a better visualization. Okay, I think like some of you might know what's coming next. Do you know this chart? This chart exists in every dashboard I ever saw. in almost every dashboard I ever saw, created by people in this room, no offense. This is the pile of spaghetti. It's not information, it's not insightful. Remember this chart, we're going to talk about it later, but please don't do this anymore. Also, don't do this. It's the same thing, but what happens here is that there's really different scales. So the purple line, very jumpy, fine, but if it would exist only in this chart, that would have been okay. But nobody here, or even zooming into the screen, nobody will be able to see what's happening with the red one. Maybe it crashes to 0. We don't know, we can't see, because this needs to be split into 2 charts. Over-information. This chart is supposed to represent salaries for football players, and every time I show this to people who actually like football or soccer, they understand less, okay? Too much information, too much colors, too much dimensions, it's too much. We need to look at a chart and understand immediately what they're telling us and where the information is going. We also need to mind the type of the chart. So, does anybody feel confused? Yes, cool. So they're trying to show what is the favorite pizza topping, but they're using a pizza which resembles too closely a pie chart. And when looking at a pie chart and showing percentages like 56 and 60, it's already more than 100, and it makes no sense. Okay, this is something you can put on a wall. It can be a nice picture, but it's not data. It's completely not data. In general, pie charts is something that is very frowned upon among data people. I tend to agree. I think that it's useful if you really like pie charts and you have 2 dimensions that add up to 100%, and you want it, go for it, okay? I'm not going to completely say don't do pie charts. I recommend not to do pie charts, but it's your call. But if you do pie charts, be careful. Don't do more than 2. This is a pie chart I approve of. This is also a pie chart I approve of. And this is my favorite pie chart. It represents Marshall's favorite bars. Okay, 3D charts. So it's slightly less common in operational dashboards, but it still exists. And doing this, besides being a pie chart, can you guess what is the proportion of the orange part out of the 100%? Who thinks it's less than 15? About 20? About 25? About 30? Okay, we'll stop at that. So what if I'll show it to you like this? Does it change your opinion? Okay. What if I'll show it to you like this? Does this change your opinion? Hopefully yes, because this way it's very clear, and this way you need to guess. And this is the main difference. This is one of the key points. Our idea with data visualization is we want to look at the screen and say, okay, I understand what's going on. If you're looking at this and you're saying, I'm trying to understand what's going on here, it's not a good visualization. This is like one of the rules you can use on yourself. Colors. If I'll show you a heat map without explaining what the information in, and I'll tell you, do you guys think that 5,253, is it a good or a bad result? Who thinks it's a good result? Show of hands. Who thinks it's a bad result? Okay. Usually green represents good. So if I do a color of heat map with green, people assume that the higher it is, the better it is. If I do red, usually people will assume that the higher it is, the worse it is. And you need to keep that in mind because, yes, not everybody here had the same reaction automatically, but this is what people tend usually to assume. So if you want to show a heat map, for example, a number of servers or whatever that does not represent necessarily good or bad, try to use neutral colors. Now, few words about colors. Yes, in some cultures, red means good. So if you're presenting a dashboard to Chinese people, then they will assume that red might be good. Yes. Some people are colorblind. 9% of the US populations are colorblind. So if you're going to show this to colorblind people, they're going to have a harder time. This does not mean you cannot use heat maps. What it means is that don't use just colors. I never use just colors. I always add numbers. You can add different shapes. Colors are a good way to help us. They are there to assist us. They cannot replace completely numbers. It is not what they're for because it will cause confusion. But they are a good way to help us fill the data faster. Remember this? So one of the best practices to dealing with this type of charts is basically grouping them. So let's say I have this chart, and I show only this on my executive dashboard. And from this, I can easily see that there's a drop, right? It's kind of clear. Now, when I see there's a drop, I can go to the right dashboard or report and start slicing it by different variables. So here I sliced it by browsers, and we can clearly see that Safari has a problem. This is where the problem is coming from. So looking at it like this shows us there's a problem. When we know there's a problem, we can break it down through different parameters and see what's the problem. But looking at it like this, it's just too hard to see. Okay, KPIs. The most important thing, if you remember one thing from this lecture, is that it's not how the chart looks like, it's what's inside, okay? It's really important to understand what you want to show before you show it, what you want people understanding from your information. This is like the most important thing. And unfortunately, a lot of the times people are mistaken with this, even though it's supposed to be trivial. So I'm going to share with you an example. This is an article I found about the percentage of girls taking Bagrut exam in STEM, so in science fields. Gender equality is something that is very close to my heart. So when I saw this article and I saw that from 2010 to 2015, they're saying that there's an increase of 24% in girls doing STEM, and that still 75% of the people who goes to STEM are boys. So first, let's take it to a slightly readable chart. So I cleared up the background, and we can now look at the numbers closely. So looking at this chart, in the beginning, I was like, something is off. I can't put my finger immediately, but after looking at it for a while, I got really annoyed with it. Can you guess why? Yes?
It doesn't normalize the growth in population, maybe?
It's very close to it. It doesn't. You say that it doesn't normalize the growth in population. You don't normalize the amount of people. So it's very similar. What basically, if taking math, just math for example, what they showed is that 4,500, I'm rounding up, 4,500 girls studied math in 5 units Bagrut in 2010, and 5,300 studied in 2015, which is a growth, right? But what I'm interested in is not the number of actual girls. I don't know what's the growth of the national population. I don't know how many girls need to be in a school year. What I care about is the percentage, okay? One number, one percentage, this is all I care about. So I actually went to the Ministry of Statistics databases, and I tried to pull the information I can. So what I discovered is that in 2010, 43% of the people who took Bagrut exams in 5 units in math were girls. Okay. And in 2015, the number grew to 49%. This is amazing. This is like gender equality right here, 2015. I'm very happy with this number. If this would have been the title, great title, amazing title. I would have published it all around. But this is not what they showed us. They showed us this. And it's a completely different conclusion. Looking at this, I'm like, okay, numbers, slightly higher numbers, that's it. This is insights, that's the difference. So I tried to pull more information on this, but unfortunately it was not available. But here are some few things that I was able to discover. So first of all, in physics, girls are doing bad, okay? Only 35% of the people girls are not doing bad in physics. Sorry, not what I meant. I meant that if we strive to equality, the situation is not so good, because only 35% of the people who are doing physics in 5 units are girls. This is my point. If we look at chemistry and biology, 63% and 64% of the people who study for 5 units Bagrut are actually girls. So if our goal is gender equality, an increase in chemistry or biology, it's not the right direction. It's not bad, anybody can study whatever he wants, but if the goal of the article is to say that we want to get to 50%, then an increase is not what they're trying to explain. So one last thing with this. Looking at the numbers again, I was like, still something feels slightly odd. I wonder how they got to 24%. And this is where this all fails completely. So the way they got to 24% is they added all the orange lines, got to 22,000. They added all the purple lines, got to 27,000, and then they did the math, which is not so smart. Because the same girl can do an exam in multiple subjects, and then, for example, if she did math, physics, and computer science, she will be counted as 3 different people, which is not the right way to go. So yes, this is why I'm losing trust at information that is shown to me. This is why every time I see a dashboard or a chart in the newspaper, I'm like, rega, let's understand what's really inside. So some best practices about making charts. Show the KPI. Explain to people what you're trying to achieve with this information, what you want them to understand. Use the right aggregation. Do you really want to show the average, the minimum, the maximum, the percentage, or not? It's important. Stay in the correct scale. Use the right colors. Put a title. Don't add too much information. It's very important, because once you add, if you remember the chart with the soccer players, if you add too much information, it's unreadable. And try to add thresholds when possible. Okay, a few words about dashboards. Do you know this? Do you recognize this? Is this how your dashboards look like usually? How useful is this? Like, how long, if I'll show you this for 3 seconds, what information can you get from this? This is pretty. I like the color schema. Again, it's a nice picture to put on the wall, maybe on a TV in like an executive dashboard, but it's not readable. It's really hard to understand. You don't need to be colorblind to understand, to see that it's how to understand what's going on here. It's not information. Again, it's brighter, slightly easier to see the differences, but it's not readable. And honestly, neither is this. Like, this is better. I do want to point out for the good the boxes. So when you can, when your goal is to show one number, are we doing good or bad? Use boxes. Make them a circle if you don't like a box, whatever. But the idea is to explain the KPI. Showing information that is pretty is a nice to have. Showing information that is useful, it's critical. This is why we show information. So readability is much more important than adding a nice background. There's actually a data to ink ratio. You want as much data and as less clutter as possible on your dashboard or charts. Very briefly, when you do create dashboards, make sure that your dashboard is focused around one KPI or several KPIs, but you know what you're showing. and it has a very clear title, so everybody knows what you're showing. Try not to overflow with information. Too much information is not readable. Stay on a high level and use drill downs when possible. Try to make clear section titles. You're showing 2 KPIs, great. Put a borderline, KPI 1, KPI 2, so it's more clear. And use one number when possible. Okay, guys, one last chart for this presentation. Can you guess what this chart represents? Any guesses?
Interest level?
Exactly. So this chart represents the concentration level during a presentation. We are in the question slides. So thank you very much. I added a list of sources. So you can have some of these charts were made by great bloggers. So you have the sources. Thank you. I'm here for questions if we have time. Do we have time? 2 y-axes. So the question is, what do you think about 2 y-axes? So we have a main axis and a secondary axis. I think that it's hard to speak about this without reminding about correlations. It can be useful because, so I'll explain the problem. You want to show 2 numbers. One, let's say, is in actual numbers, and the other one is a percentage. But you want to show them one side by side, and sometimes both will go down during the same time, and this is what you're showing. So it's a good visualization tool. The problem is that it can lead to wrong conclusions, because if the numbers do correlate because of an actual causation reason, then it's great. But sometimes it can lead to wrong conclusion, and just because the trend is similar does not mean that one caused the other. So be careful with it. Okay, thank you. Okay.